It's Pillow Talk today, guys. I'm Andrew. This is Alyssa. She can't control herself right now. She's not ready for Pillow Talk. This is Brandy. She's our friend. She'll be observing with us today. You may hear our friend Bree in the background as well. She is across the hall, around the corner, working on her own project. Today we want to talk to you about gender and education. I really have the NPR voice going on right now, and I really like it. So gender and education, and we also want to talk about the contradictions and connections within them. Who was this article written by? Does it say?
Nope, there's no author.
Okay, so we don't have an author for this article. It's just titled Gender and Education.
But it's on Blackboard.
It is on Blackboard. So.
And then we also have
non-sexist, culturally inclusive instruction, issues and strategies. And we're really going to be looking at the strategies and approaches they take to teaching in the classroom without being sexist, I guess, is basically in the title. So our first little note card is what issues are at stake within the reading. And it's been a while since we've read this, but we read it again real briefly. And we saw that it really talks... First of all, let's talk about what gender is in the world. Because I really think that that's more broad and you can narrow it down. So, for me, gender's definition is mentally how you see yourself in an identity. Are you a boy or are you a girl? And I think in education and in the world, that whole battle of feminism, women want to be treated equally. I feel like that's really where gender comes into question. Not so much into question as so much it is challenged. Are you picking up on what I'm saying at all? Like, women they have the glass ceiling aspect, they can't ever do better than a man. Man is always privileged more than women, no matter race, really. Even a black man will do better than a woman, a white woman. I know for me personally, there have been experiences where actually a woman was better than a man at a white woman who was the administrator for my middle school, which was, a rarity, especially in northwestern Indiana, because we're still pretty south up here, I feel. It may be just me. What are you thinking?
Well, yeah, I think it's a mixture. Like, the northwest region of Indiana, it's too much of a mixture because people come from the south. Like, my family is from the south, as we've spoken about before. Mm-hmm. But then you have people coming from Chicago and Illinois and Michigan, and we all just kind of clash.
Right. And so I think that gender in the classroom, it's kind of a subtle problem. It's not an outspoken thing because you see women teachers often. I feel like that a majority of female educators they're kind of blindsided by their male students and their male faculty members. Like, okay, for example, you have a female teacher who she's teaching a class, and then she is in line for a position of tenure, and there's also a male in line for a position of tenure. This happened at my school. The male got it because he was a guy, and she filed for a suit against him because of this, and I don't know the outcome of it. I had moved during the trial or whatever, the court case, and I'm unaware of what happened, but that is an example I can think of how gender in the workplace and in education kind of was. But a female educator got denied of a better position where she would receive, pay and ensure that she had a job, but she didn't get it because she is female.
I think there's a lot more problems with gender, specifically in the workplace as a teacher. I think a lot of people are blinded by it and brush over it when it involves the student specifically, because, you know, as a student, if you don't come from a home that really talks about gender, which in my case at my school, that wasn't really a thing, but in my house it was. So going to school as a white young girl, for me, meant that I felt like I had a voice as a woman, as a female. So, but a lot of other kids just saw the stereotypical views of how they saw gender. So, boys are rough and rowdy, and they have a lot of different roles. As a man, they do sports.
What's that phrase you hate? Boys will be boys.
That's the phrase that Aaron hates.
Oh.
Boys will be
boys.
boys.
I thought I heard you say the other day that...
I don't like it when boys are called rowdy. It's kind of weird.
Oh.
But then, like, for example, at Yost Elementary School, where I went to elementary school at, we had a lot of different plays, and I didn't realize until actually, like, maybe a couple weeks ago when we were talking about gender, specifically in this class, that there was a gender role that was placed upon me, and I didn't even know about it. I portrayed a young Native American female mom in a play, and I wanted to ride on a horse and do all of the other stuff that the boys did, because I thought that that was more fun, and I thought that that was cooler than sitting on the floor and grinding corn and holding my baby and singing with it in the air. So,
sounds like it turned into, like, The Lion King when holding your baby in the air.
But that was one of the things that I experienced at a young age that I didn't even realize until I got to college, that specifically showed gender with students. But as you go through the school system, you don't really notice it as a student, but as you grow up and you go to college and then you're, like us, you're trying to become a teacher, you realize how many female teachers there are and how much their gender can influence the classroom and how much a male teacher's gender can affect the classroom.
I think that for me, in comparison to you growing up, I had the talk of, you know, you treat the girl with respect, you make sure that, you know, she's protected, you make sure that she is safe, and this was because I had a sister. And it was really my dad who sat me down and said, you know, you make sure you treat girls well and you treat women properly and they're respectable people. And then, you know, most of my friends are female too, so, I mean, naturally I already have a general amount of respect for them as a young man now. Back then, it wasn't so much, mainly because I guess I just didn't know who I was back then. You know, you're still young, you don't care, you're trying to identify who you are, and I had that close-knit group of friends who were all guys, so, and I heard the phrase constantly, boys will be boys, when we would be outside playing in the yard, and I don't know, it took me a while until I was probably in high school to realize that boys won't always be boys, a lot of the time, because they identify themselves as, you know, either trans men or gay men, or they, you know, they find a more sensitive side of themselves. And so, to me, that's where I ended up. I ended up, you know, more on the effeminate spectrum of masculinity. And I realized that, you know, boys won't always be boys, and girls can protect themselves. But yes, I should probably, you know, be there, because there were instances where my mom she went Black Friday shopping, and she didn't get mugged, but there was an attempted mugging for her purse and all the stuff. And it's more about the principle of, you know, hey, if society thinks women are weak and frail creatures, and I would disagree with that.
Well, I can prove it, because
you're gonna fight me?
Because when I took that in-class test about femininity or masculinity, I am on the masculine side. which is not a surprise. I've been taking this test my entire life in all my classes, and I always end up more on the masculine side. Even though I embrace a lot of my femininity, and I feel that I identified my gender very young. Mm-hmm. So I have a pink cow to prove it. But
I really like the argument of meninism versus feminism. And I know we don't have anything on that really.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
I really want to.
We're not talking about that.
Okay, we won't. We'll save it for another video.
Sure.
We'll do a whole video about meninism versus feminism.
Yeah, okay.
So the unknown author of this first article, Gender and Education, kind of positions themselves in the position of, hey, let's treat gender like it is non-existent. Let's acknowledge it, but let's treat the students as they are students. Not as, oh, this is a boy student, and oh, this is a girl student. This girl student is going to be so much more intellectual, and she can prosper so much in the education. But as a boy, if he doesn't know something, it's totally understandable. If she doesn't know something, she's going to get reprimanded and, treated like garbage. Because she doesn't know something, and she's supposed to know something because girls mature faster than boys, and that whole argument about how they're just much more smarter than boys are. When really, it can be reversed. Because I've been in the experience where, you have your nerdy boys who are super smart, and the girls who are very social and not adept in academia. And I just feel that argument is an inaccurate argument because you can't treat people that way. And I think that's just how this generation is, this new generation, where they see people as people and not people of gender and sex. I don't know. That's kind of just how I feel about it.
I think one of the biggest connections in this reading that the author makes and wants teachers to make is that gender overlaps and there's multiple layers to students and their genders, and so it's really about getting females and males and people who identify in different ways to come together and work together in the classroom. So that's just a little point.
And I think that whole part about identity, because gender is, how you identify, and I think gender in the classroom setting is really difficult because if you have a boy who identifies as a girl, that really, you get that whole, no, you're a boy way of thinking. You have the male genitalia. You are a boy. You should act and be like a boy. And that's kind of just shutting down, first of all, the student's self-identification, and that's trying to promote a stereotype. Second of all, that's like crippling a student's self-confidence because now they see themselves and what they're doing as wrong.
That kind of connects with the second article. Non-sexist, culturally inclusive instruction.
Trying to just be open to your students and being open in return.
Yeah, honestly, like one of the specific pieces or parts of this article is cultural diversity, and gender in and of itself is its own culture because there's so many different people that don't identify, that do identify, that are female, that are male. There's so many different stages of gender. So it just kind of creates its own culture that we have to recognize within our schools and classrooms. And going along with that, we have to realize that gender shouldn't limit a student just as other cultures and other backgrounds that they have shouldn't limit them as well. So their expectations should be set and they shouldn't be diminished by the different pieces of them. If you catch my joke.
I think you do. Do you mean limited by the school administration or by other people?
Limited by what other people see from their
own like values and beliefs.
Yeah, but like, so if like a teacher comes across a student who identifies as a male but is her sex is
the sex is
female, like that shouldn't limit the expectations that the teacher has for that student, that the student has for
so because
themselves.
She's female, she only has this capacity,
right?
But because she identifies as male, he therefore has this capacity. Okay, I get it. I mean, I myself, as a teacher from this article, I would like to think of myself as being the open person. Being, first of all, identifying as a gay man. Second of all, being a black man. Third of all, being a feminist. I really think it's a trifecta of go forth into the world and try and do social justice for someone or somebody. Or something, not somebody.
Like setting up your classroom climate.
Right, trying to make my classroom climate very open, very. I want to make people feel comfortable, and in high school, I feel like that is one of the most crucial points to do that, because by the time you get to college, it's too late. You've really set yourself up. If you've had bad teachers throughout your high school career, you've been set up to either repress your identity, or you have been told your identity is wrong, and so you have to fight for it. And in college, you have the freedom to fight for it, but you don't really know how to, because you have to discover everything first still. And I want to be that kind of teacher that in high school, I want to make a student feel comfortable enough that they can come to me with a problem and be like, hey, I'm having thoughts about identifying as male or female. I'm having these thoughts of whether I am sexually attracted to men or women. And I think that first of all, having someone to be that open with is most important, because a parent can be immediately rejecting of that, which damages a student's self-identity. And then, they can't tell their friends, because then high school word flocks. Like you honk across the street and all the birds on the telephone pole fly away. I'm sorry. I thought that was a pretty good analogy.
It's pretty good.
Okay. You just seem out of it, I guess.
No, nothing.
Oh, okay. I just want the classroom climate to be open, and that it's understandable, and that there is zero judgment, like a zero tolerance policy, basically. Which I feel like I can set up in my own personal classroom, that I can't do school-wide unless it's already set up school-wide. I mean, that's just how I see it in my job, in the future of being a teacher. As a male teacher. As a black male teacher. As a gay black male teacher. Let me encompass the spectrum real fast.
Okay.
How do you see yourself as a female white teacher?
Well, obviously I'm a feminist, so there's that. But, like Andrew was talking about his classroom climate, my classroom climate is basically the same. But, I always had a teacher that had an open classroom climate, that had a, what did you say?
Zero tolerance
policy for bullying. But our school had a zero tolerance policy for bullying, which, let's face it, that usually doesn't work when it's school-wide.
No, it doesn't.
I always had those teachers to go to, and because I liked my field that I'm in now back in high school, they were always English teachers. So it was easy to connect through things we had in common. And I was also a part of different things and had a lot of different interests that helped me connect with other students and the teachers that we all enjoyed. But with that being said, I wouldn't have made those connections if they didn't have those classroom climates that allowed not just me, a white female, to come into their classroom, but someone like Andrew or any other person in our school to come in. And as a teacher, I think that you go into this field thinking that you'll have more control over your classroom than what you actually have. It's more about the students than yourself.
Mm.
Your students ultimately help you create your classroom climate. It's
Right.
just...
You really have to look at... And being a high school teacher, you're going to have 8 different classes, 7 different classes. And you have to kind of...
School.
And if you're in middle school and elementary school, what is it, like one class that you just work with all day long?
Not middle school. Middle school's...
Oh, my middle school was different. My middle school had had like 3 different teachers. You had band, you had your main math class, and then you had your English class. And from your math and English, they also taught history and sciences, which was weird to me. I mean, not weird to me, I guess, because I, lived in it for 3 years, but yeah, with multiple different classes, you have to build a climate for each one and try and adjust instead of setting a straight climate, which is what I really would like to do. I would like to set a straight climate for each class, but I know that's not a feasible nor realistic goal.
You can do anything if you set your mind to it.
Okay, well, I feel like having a bunch of kids who might, have an entirely passionate rejection because of their religion or their faith that they've been brought up on to the idea of a homosexual person or the idea of, gender equality in a classroom. I feel like that's where it's going to struggle to deal with the student and the student's parents. Students' parents are where I'm really concerned.
I could bring up Nana.
I feel like Nana would decimate anything I ever had to say.
I always bring up my Nana because she's just very...
conservative?
Nana. Anyways, yeah, that's one of the... obviously I have a lot of different views than a lot of people I associate with. I have a lot more feminist views than a lot of people I associate with, so gender is a pretty big discussion for me and for...
It's just a very broad-based discussion to really try and narrow it to a specific topic it's a little rough.
I think specifically with these articles, it just makes me feel like there was a lot I didn't realize when I was in high school. And
gender is something you don't recognize it until
I didn't see it
life.
because a lot of people didn't have a problem with it, and a lot of it was glossed over. And
it's got that rose tint.
I was always a very independent person, so I didn't really think much of it. But there's a lot.
I feel like our generation was really just bathed in independence.
Yeah.
And really, gender isn't something that we see until either we're still not really seeing it as we should be. We know that it's there, but we're not seeing it now. But for us as a generation, we were bathed in independence, and so it's like, whatever, gender's cool. You're a dude, but you're a girl, that's cool, whatever. Or, hey, teacher man, don't give her that grade, or don't treat her like that because she's a girl. Or don't give him that grade because he's a guy and you think he's dumb. He's only good at sports. My sociology, Mr. McCoy, because he was the football coach. What was he? He reasoned with one of his football players that if they didn't do well on a paper, but they scored the winning touchdown in the game, he'd give them an A. I was like, you can't do that. You can't do that. What would you do for a girl if she was in the same situation? She doesn't play football. What do you get a reason for her to get an A?
If you cheer at the football game, you get an A.
Oh my god. Perpetuate the stereotype of a cheerleader, why don't you?
Anyways, what more do you want to know regarding this topic of gender?
I don't know if I want to know anything more about gender and education because knowing more is going to infuriate me. To know that there are more stereotypes and more biases and more intricate
I think we know all of them.
I feel like they go further in depth that we are aware of, if we know all of them. To say we know all of them, I feel that they go further in depth and that there are hidden truths within them.
I think what I would want to know more about, because I feel like, after learning more about gender in different college courses and not really fully realizing how affected our society is by gender when I was younger, I want to know how to incorporate it properly within my classroom. And the Creating the Non-Sexist Classroom talks a lot about different exercises that you can do within your classroom. So I don't think gender should be an ignored topic within the classroom. I just think it will take a lot of time for us to be able to incorporate it in a way that...
It's a bomb you have to defuse in your classroom.
That makes sense, but still makes way for that tough concept.
I would like to do a paper with my students about gender in high school. Because I want to teach juniors and seniors, so they have the capacity to think on it at a small scale, I feel.
Well, I think every student really has the capacity to think about it. They're living it, so...
Yeah, they're living it, but, I mean, when you pose the question, hey, what do you do that he does differently, and why do you do it differently, to anyone is really going to shake the foundation of what they've been brought up on. Like Barbies, why does he have a Barbie and why does she have a G.I. Joe? Why can't I have a Barbie? Why does Barbie only wear high heels and drive Ferraris? Why doesn't G.I. Joe wear high heels and drive Ferraris?
I will be using that poem in my classroom, I promise.
I think that's all we have for Pillow Talk today.
Not.
No? Is there more that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah.
So this article connects to the Bennett framework. Loosely, I feel. Yes, it connects. Gender and education specifically, you really can't do any kind of curriculum reform to educate individuals. I mean, unless you find this spectacular book or this spectacular poem about being a woman or being a guy, and then compare the two to really drive the hammer into the nail for students. I mean, I can't think of anything.
It connects strictly with positive teacher expectations.
Okay.
Don't limit your students based on gender. Culturally competent teaching. Understand what gender is before you talk about it. What else? Multicultural competence. When do we not deal with multicultural competence? I don't want to say social justice because I feel like that's
respect for human dignity and universal human rights. There you go. Respect the fact that I am a man, or respect the fact that I identify as a female.
It's a pretty good one. It's a pretty good
stunning.
One. It's the way she did it. You can't raise your hand like that.
I don't know if there's anything else for the Bennett framework. I think that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
You're going to have to edit the shit out of it.
I have to edit the shit out of that
I have
one
more
tomorrow.
questions.
Oh my gosh, we can talk about it. What? We're not tired. Let's be honest. Like, what do you want to talk about?